This is Listen Lakeland, the show that keeps you up to date on all the things that make our city a great place to live, work, and play. Today's host built her career in communications and public relations after graduating from Florida Southern College. As the president and CEO of the Lakeland Chamber of Commerce, she's charged with making Lakeland a place where business can prosper through advocacy, professional development, and education. Please welcome your host, Amy Wiggins.
Welcome to the good life.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Wiggins, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this month's very special edition. I feel like they're all very special editions of the Listen Lakeland show. As you know, this is an extension of Lakeland Vision. Our board takes on this project, and it's been a more than 20-year project for us to highlight the amazing things that are going on in our community. And so today, I get to celebrate with someone who I don't think needs much introduction, but for those of you who don't know her, I'm joined today by our Mayor Pro Tem, Stephanie Madden. Thank you so much for joining us today. I told her when we started, I'm not entirely sure where our conversation is going to go, but we're going to have a great time no matter what. So Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, absolutely. So you know this is this March, so we are talking a little bit about women's history, and I thought no better opportunity for us to talk about the city of Lakeland and the legacy that not only our foremothers and forefathers have left for us, but the legacy that we're building as women leaders and leaders in general in this community. And so why don't you tell us just a little bit to start about who you are and how you got to this point in your life and in your career, but like Reader's Digest version, because I know you well enough to know this could be our entire show.
Well, I would say that one thing, since it's focused on women,
yes,
is that women are mothers, and
yes,
we are the people who are designated to carry humans. And I have had the pleasure of having 6 children, and my youngest is a senior in high school. So after this year, I will feel really good that they've all at least, become an adult and graduated high school.
So they've done more than that, for the record.
And I also have a couple married, and one, my oldest son and his wife Ashley, have 4 children. So that's exciting. Now we're already going to hockey games to celebrate. Now that I know that this is my last lacrosse season for my high school students.
So you're picking up hockey.
Yes, I know.
Instead.
So now I have grandkids to be able to watch sports. But so I would say that, being a mother of 6 and being married to Steve Madden, but not the shoe guy, for, 30 years, we
can edit that part out.
Yes,
Steve will never know.
I think I'm the one who gets the anniversaries and the birthdays wrong. But we, started a business in 1995 out of our first apartment, and, didn't know what we were doing, but we started to build a family and build a business. Yes. And it's just really something that I'm proud of, that been able to stay married and keep a business and, a fairly good reputation, hopefully in the same small town that we started it. And getting the business in a place where I could do something like run for city commission was something I'd never really thought of.
Really?
Certainly had been, a volunteer, past junior league president, and been on the board of Lighthouse and done a lot of United Way, do a campaign every year at Madden, but never really had considered that nonpartisan service to the community to run for a city commission seat. But I had friends, Scott Franklin was running, and the mayor was running, Bill Mutz and Pam were friends of mine. And I thought, well, why is everyone, interested in local government, and what do you even do over there at City Hall? And Edie Yates was the only female at the time and was term limited. And I really thought I was joking by saying, well, we have to have a female on the commission, maybe I should run. And Steve really took me up on it and said, maybe you should. Maybe this is a good time for you. The business is in a good spot. The kids are in a good spot. And I would say that is really the heart of the mother, of seeing your 6 kids and loving them all and knowing they all come from a different perspective, and being in a nonpartisan role where I can think of all the constituencies as my kids, and I can love them all and disagree and even get in a fight if necessary, but work together for the best possible solutions for Lakeland. So I would say that, that motherhood piece for me was probably a big reason why I became interested in being a city commissioner.
I'm so impressed with that perspective. Even as many conversations as you and I have had through the years, I don't know that you've ever articulated that to me. And I really appreciate that and value that, especially as someone who kind of grew up in that politics space. I was involved with youth in government and, debate club and student government and all those things. And so it's always been a part of my peripheral vision. And so I think it's really interesting to hear that kind of varying perspective, because we don't always like the decisions that our family members make or that our kids are going to make later on down the road, but we still love them and we still want what's best for them. So I really appreciate you saying that. I think it's an interesting insight into how you have especially come into this role as a public figure.
Thank you. Well, and it was interesting because, probably one of the biggest trials of our commission was going through COVID. Mm-hmm. And I remember that I was kind of the lone person on the commission that thought we should keep our Lake Hollingsworth path and the parks open. And I had protesters in my yard and with, knocking on my door. And my son was home from West Point. My son was home from University of Florida. Everyone was home and they were all doing school or work, remotely in our house. And so they were hearing these public conversations and emergency meetings. And, it came down to everyone was, flooding in with emails, and I was up late in the night. My kids would see me, just reading, like, you want people to die. And people were just very vitriolic because of fear and the uncertainty. And, I could understand that, but it's still, it kind of creates the cortisol when you're reading it, and taking it personally.
Absolutely.
And you still have to then say, okay, I have to be calm. And it's almost like, dealing with a toddler or a teenager. You have to stay on the platform and stay level-headed. And my kids, because of what they were hearing and seeing, I got a text from one of them, and he said, "Mom, it's okay. Just go with the flow and just vote with everybody. We don't want them to call your name out on Facebook and put our address." And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, if I cannot stand up alone for something like this, what could I stand alone for? And I'll never forget that moment. And I think that, the mother in me, does probably, it does kind of guide me sort of as a person who's representing a constituency of PTA, kids and families and all the sports and all of those folks that I've known throughout the years and all the schools and the sport, those are part of the constituencies that I represent. I guess I just didn't know that nurturing, uniquely kind of feminine, since we're talking about women this month, nature would play out, during a global pandemic or during some of the things that we faced that I feel have benefited and helped informed my decision-making, maybe uniquely, as a woman.
Sure. Well, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you have kind of taken on in your role as a commissioner. I think most of us recognize the incredible impact that you've had here at Lakeland Electric. I say here at Lakeland Electric because we're very fortunate that they open up their conference room space for us to record the show. And I think you have really helped our community see and understand the important role that LE plays in our in the not just in power generation for our community, but overall. So, what do you think is the biggest legacy that you would leave for our community, understanding through that kind of Lakeland Electric lens?
So I would say that I had Mayor Mutt say this to me one time. Well, you're just a futurist, and so you just have to understand that you're a little ahead. You're always thinking ahead, and we need to decide today. And I get that. And that's why we need 7 people,
Right.
up there. But when I started to go to American Public Power Association conferences and starting to hear about the energy disruption, it was so fascinating to me as a small business owner to make it through the recession and to, I took a time off of, being home with my kids when they were little. In 2010, I had to come back to work full time. Thankfully, my kids, were in school by then. And just go, what do we do with our revenues cut in half? And what are we going to do? Will the economy turn and how long? And some of those things of coming back into our business in a very tenuous economic downturn, it made me realize that the issue at Lakeland Electric and this disruption is not just about if you're politically inclined to believe in climate change or if you're politically inclined to love, gas and oil. And that seems to be the national narrative. And I think that one of the things I've found that is so beautiful about local government is it transcends those partisan divides. Like we have to think about issues like race or issues like the climate or energy, not with regard to what is dictated to us or we have to check a box on a partisan platform, but to say, even if I'm just a business owner and I see that this is a red flag, like if coal was just going out of fashion, it wasn't just that we thought that the emissions were dangerous,
right.
Then we need to know that. And it turned out we were at the end of our life cycle and we're able to decommission coal, but what are we going to move to next?
Right.
And then to be able to think, okay, well, you know what? Maybe fracking did give us energy independence. It brought the price of gas down. Let's go ahead and get gas turbines. It's half the emissions of coal. But let's not just get the gas turbines that are only natural gas. Let's go with this German company that is already injecting hydrogen up to 30%. And if we can get some green hydrogen through these research and demonstration projects and we start to ramp up on that, we don't limit ourselves with these 30, 50-year life cycle assets, by doing something that would later be mandated or, be forced to shut down. So that's been really exciting to just be kind of a futurist, to be able to be the liaison for Lakeland Electric, to see in this energy transition how we're moving to creative, innovative new ways to have solar on rooftops in neighborhoods versus just one person putting it on here and there that kind of puts a strain on the grid. To think about things strategically and methodically, like going forward. And
so talk a little bit more about that microgrid kind of concept, because there may be some folks listening that don't know about that.
Yeah, so when you think of solar, I was horrified to find out that in order to get the same amount of energy from solar, we pretty much have to fill up the peninsula. And then it would only give us power when the sun's shining unless we come up with magical batteries that give us more than 4 to 6, 8 hours of charge. So things like that you just take for granted. Like you think, well, we have a sunshine state. Well, really have a partly cloudy state. And we have nights when we actually want electricity as well. And so what are we going to do? Like if we're wanting to go cleaner in the state of Florida. And so we have been able to work with some builders and some innovators. And we're going to do a pilot project where they work with the developers from the beginning to say, we need to have an easement on your roof, not in your backyard for poles and wires. And we're going to be able to place the solar just perfectly to get the maximum amount of sun as possible. We're going to pair it with this new block energy, which was created by kind of from a utility perspective, like what works best with the grid, not just a solar panel company that just makes solar panels, but may or may not work with your local utility. These are all paired together through blockchain, and they are able to dynamically charge the battery and also give electricity to the house. And then there's an on-site battery storage as well. So they had a pilot over in Waimama near Tampa, and we were able to go see that. And they had one on an Air Force base.
Oh, wow.
And so that's pretty cool that we're going to be able to, Lakeland Electric and a local builder, Highland Homes, is able to work with this block energy to create a neighborhood from the beginning in a best case scenario with regard to having a solar array. And those are things that then we don't have to build capacity like new transmission lines, new substations. If as we grow new neighborhoods, we can use some innovations in that new growth.
That's really exciting. And I appreciate especially, I know that innovation, and I like that you are thrilled to see yourself as a futurist, because I do think that there's something special about that. And it comes back to we really do benefit from different voices. And one of the things that I kind of wanted to mention was that the difference between local politics and national politics is that local politics runs into you at Publix.
Yes.
And I think that it's really important for us to continue to remember that our elected officials here, especially at our city and county level, are our neighbors, just like our business owners are our neighbors. And everyone is working toward making Lakeland and making Polk County an amazing place to live. And we're not always going to agree, and we're not always going to see things from exactly the same place. But that's what makes it really cool that we get to live here and that we get to share space with people who are different from us. So I appreciated you saying that, diversity really comes down to who our neighbors are here locally and who the folks are that we interact with on a daily basis, not just some ideological something or another on a political platform. So I do think that the more I can say that about local politics, the more I can say that, because I'm not going to stop. That is just something that I know that we all believe, and we all are grateful for people who are willing to put themselves out there to make a difference on behalf of us. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And I tell you, I feel like people don't always believe that, but when they decide to, rather than look at an issue, whatever it is, as a win or loss, and maybe it's just that you don't want the self-storage in front of your neighborhood, and it's either a win or a loss, whether it happens, to say, okay, it's not about a win or a loss, it's about let's all come to the table and let's decide that all arguments have merit, and let's negotiate, and at the end of the day, the city wins. And maybe it's still built, but because of the landscape buffer and the setbacks and the reduced height and some of the changes that are made, the project still allows for the wildlife in the stormwater pond that you've gotten used to, that you love. Or I've seen that when neighbors do, instead of just thinking that they're going to all get matching T-shirts and show up in droves and hope that they win, if the goal is rather than to win versus lose, instead let's all win. Like there's a better possibility if we work together and to talk, even though it's hard. It's sometimes it's really tricky to talk about things. There's passion and there's interest on both sides. But when I see those neighbors and developers or people on different sides of an issue, like moving a monument, when we really come together as neighbors and we come face to face in that commission or face to face and talk about it with each other, versus just putting things on social media. Or, we love emails too, because it's very helpful. We're able to take a lot of information through an email. But the times when people come in, I think that I would hope that they would be pleasantly surprised that even if the outcome wasn't what they would have dreamed, that it was a better outcome than if they had not come at all.
Absolutely. I hear what you're saying, and I know that it is so, sometimes it feels impossible, right, on both sides, to feel like you're going to reach a resolution, because we sometimes, I think, as voters or those folks that are not sitting on the dais may have that kind of concept that we're just one voice, and how can one voice really make an impact? And so I think that you and our entire elected commission are evidence that one voice really does make an impact. One voice really does matter, because it's about the people who are living in community with us. So I appreciate you reiterating that as well.
And I like when you said one voice, because you think, well, it's really a collective voice. We have 7. We're all listening to people at Publix and at our neighborhood functions. But it's true, because it could be that one person's perspective. I'll never forget when I was at an OUC meeting about why we're not deploying more EV infrastructure. We had the Volkswagen money, let's ramp it up. Then people will buy EVs. They're not going to buy them until they have that infrastructure. And they said, well, we really are hoping to get the DC fast chargers before we just start using this money to put the chargers that take 6 to 8 hours, because we've got a fairly long peninsula to evacuate if we have a storm. And that would be impossible if we had mass adoption to EVs and the infrastructure was all these longer. And I remember thinking, I had never thought about evacuation. You know, so when you're listening to a national narrative on EVs or why Florida's behind and, you know, whatever your political, you know, belief is about, and, you know, EVs, that's important consideration for Florida differently than any other state in the country. And so that was one voice to me that made all the difference in my perspective. And so I always think about that, like, I don't want to be blindsided. Like the more, and my kids always, you know, make fun of me that I always am like, you know, talking about Socrates, but really Socrates versus the sophists. Like the sophists were just kind of the current media, just kind of forcing you in a box, wanting you to repeat the narrative they're already wanting to say and forcing you into that conversation. Socrates didn't want to just win and be right. He wanted to find truth. And so how do you do that? You have to ask a lot of questions from a lot of people, from a lot of different perspectives. And then at the end, if you still feel like you were right at the beginning, great, but at least you'll know and you've really vetted it.
Right.
But instead of going into something and just saying, I don't really care if I'm wrong, I just want to be right and win. I've tried to, and I feel like this, you know, local government, nonpartisan place has been a place where that type of Socratic dialogue and decision-making has been able to be fruitful.
I would agree. So let's talk about kind of deploying that Socratic dialogue and encouraging that in the next generation. I know that I think that we haven't talked about it on this show yet, but it is one of your, to me, greatest legacies as a commissioner. You have created a youth council for our city, and I know how important that was to you, and I think I have a firm belief that it's important to the future of our community. So tell us a little bit about that. I know you could probably expound for, again, another 30 minutes on that. So Reader's Digest version of the City of Lakeland Youth Council.
Well, I always have to give my colleague, Commissioner Walker, I loved having him as a mentor and friend. And so because he was so involved in Florida League of Cities, I mean, I was his tag along, you know, no one else would want to go to the conferences. And so he ran for office. He was the president. I mean, I was his, you know, I held his signs, you know, I went to all these conferences. And so I did kind of each time try to find out a little information about a youth council, but I looked at the calendar and, you know, certainly during COVID, but even post-COVID, people don't know that we're in a lot of boards and committees outside of the meetings that, you know, are at City Hall.
True.
And so we could be driving across, 5 counties on the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, or, you know, I'm in the Tourism Development Council. You mean Lakeland Electric, traveling for energy conferences. And so I was worried at first to try to take that on, you know, by myself. But, you know, Interact Alliance always did the Arts and Communications Day for that. You know, my husband's done the Arts and Communications Day for the Chamber's Leadership Lakeland. You know, we kind of know how to organize, you know, kind of a leadership course. So I thought, okay, I can do this, even if I get no funding, as long as I can get my colleagues to say yes. I just need to start it. And my youngest son, Ben, was a senior. So, of course, I thought it'll be educational for him. I made him go to the conference with me last summer and take notes in the youth council part, you know, and I went to the adult part. And, you know, we're just like, we're going to do it. So we've got it to be 15 members. The mayor's 3 appointees, and each commissioner got 2. Although we did not come to the table with appointees, we kind of put it as an open invitation to guidance counselors with all the schools in the city limits. And, you know, through that process, they were able to go through the same process we do as a commissioner. They had to fill out their application and get it to the city clerk's office within a deadline.
Yes.
It was disappointing to some parents to realize it was city limits, but that's kind of how it is to run for city commission. You know, if you live on one side of Lake Miriam Drive, you can't run, you know.
Exactly.
So we got the 15. We started in the fall. We've had a meeting every month. This month they're off for March because of spring break. But we've been able to, everything, the city attorney didn't want me to do anything that would increase a liability. So we've had our meetings we went to. Our first meeting was a retreat at Simpson Park and the library, Jackson Library. So they saw Parks and Rec and learned about libraries. And then we had a meeting at City Hall. They sat in the commission chamber behind the dais, taught them parliamentary procedure and had them make motions and second and amend motions and all of those fun things. And then, you know, we have a co-clerk. So they kind of take the minutes. Okay. And then we took a tour of the police department and the fire department. And of course, those were so exciting. and able to take a lot of pictures. We've heard from Public Works, and I think they were amazed to find out how many things, Public Works covers.
Right.
We had Kevin Cook give us a tour of CRA and our community development department, and they got to see the big Orlando Health blueprints to see how big buildings come to pass in that permitting department. And so we have next month at the end of the year, which will end in May, the second commission meeting of May, they have to make a presentation on something that they've seen or learned about the city that they think could be improved, or maybe something that would give more youth access. And so I can't divulge what they've been talking about, but in April, we have some staff coming to the meeting, and we will be using parliamentary procedure, and we will be vetting ideas and kind of putting their presentation together to present to the commission in May of something that they think that would be great
Stephanie, how
for the city of
cool.
Lakeland. So I'm excited for them to have that opportunity to come and present. They were sworn in at the first city commission meeting in September. So they did get to come to a city commission meeting and see how that rolled, but this will be their chance. And the youth that were not seniors have an opportunity for a 2-year service if they want to.
Okay.
And then we'll see how many spots are left to then go through the process again this summer for other youth to be able to fill out an application and participate next year.
That's fantastic. And I love that every year the commission has access to really amazing brand new ideas from folks who have been through the process and understand it. Do other communities have that component as part of their youth councils as well?
Yeah, so I tried to look, they do everything from fun videos to work with their communications department.
Yes.
Some go to Tallahassee by bus, and they get to be a part of the Florida League of Cities Youth Day and advocate on behalf of youth issues.
There were quite a few youth council groups that were up there when we were up there at the end of January with our Chamber of Commerce group. So it was a lot of fun to see them and to see their excitement about being in Tallahassee and seeing the things that make our state government run, I think we even got to see some of them at our Supreme Court tour, which was fantastic. So well, and Commissioner
McCarley, she is a pro. She takes kids every year to Tallahassee and DC. So I'm hoping, I know that she's busy with that, and she's got a senior graduating this year as well. But like all boards and committees, they're at the pleasure of the mayor, and he does, kind of look for aptitude or, what your calendar looks like on if you can take on a new role. So even the youth council, certainly I would be willing to do this, as long as necessary to make sure it's got good, a good solid foundation. But, someone like Commissioner McCarley who goes to Tallahassee, we would obviously then need to have an appropriation of some funds, maybe get a bus, and we'd have to talk to our city attorney about the liability of all those things. So I was just thrilled that they just let me do it this year, just to get it started and to get kids. There's so much. The city is so rich. Can you imagine? They could go to our water processing plants and the Lakeland Electric tour. There's so much they could see, but we did what we could do this year, once a month, and hopefully they do feel like it was worth their while.
That's fabulous. Well, so we've got just a couple of minutes left. No surprise, I knew that we would have a great time talking to one another today. Just coming back to the idea of legacy, how do you hope that the work that you're doing today is building? I don't want to say legacy there, but just building a platform and a foundation for future leaders in our city and in our county and in our state. What is that? I know you have a vision statement for the impact that you're making. You're that kind of human being who already has figured that out. Just kind of close us with what your purpose is and what your vision is for the work that you've done over the last several decades.
Well, I guess the artist in me would probably use kind of a metaphor of like a bouquet or something beautiful that certainly, it's impossible to think one person or anything that I could bring to the table could do anything transformative or leave a legacy. But when you think about being a piece of a puzzle, or you think about just having colleagues and having the opportunity to talk about different things about the city, and just to be able to be, maybe I'm that one voice. Like I said, that one voice gave me the aha moment about evacuation routes. I feel like I've been able to be there to stand next to Commissioner Walker when he had the idea for the cultural center. I feel like I was able to hear when the certificate of need was going to be removed and competition was coming into the market, and then that might affect our revenue source from the hospital. Those kind of things, like, because I'm a business owner and because I see threats at revenue streams, those things, like, oh my gosh, they're red flags to me. Or like, what are we going to do to get cleaner energy? I would just hope that every person, that I just bring my one perspective and my one voice, and in that bouquet of flowers, that the Lakeland is a more beautiful place at the end of the day because I got to be a part of the bouquet.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm so grateful for your time today and for your perspective and for your wisdom. And I thank you all for joining us today. Please go to lakelandvision.org to participate in our survey this month. And of course, tune in every month on the first Sunday so that you can hear our show about all the great things happening in Lakeland.
I said, welcome to the good life.
Listen Lakeland is brought to you as a collaborative project between Lakeland Vision, the City of Lakeland, and Hall Communications, a community working together to provide an exceptional quality of life. Thank you for being with us.